that's right. Well, but I do think there's a reality check that might be in order there. Yes, the Republicans did weaponize the House Intelligence Committee to some extent. Devin Nunes was sort of an attack dog. The way that Darrell Issa was, you'll all recall when he was the chair of the House Oversight Committee. But I'm not sure Chairman Richard Burr of the Senate Intelligence Committee is going to be in the mood for launching investigations in the House Democrats or to whoever he thinks is going to be information. We'd like to talk about Dianne Feinstein in the run-up to the midterms being some of his information, using her information basically, and the Brett Kavanaugh hearings. My guess is from the president that one thing that we also talked about this morning is the Mueller investigation. Obviously, we did not see Robert Mueller was playing pretty in the run-up to the midterms, very much unlike what we saw from the former FBI director Jim Comey in 2016. Now, a lot of Democrats are saying that Mueller time, and they're wondering what the special counsel is going to do over the next couple of months. And when that mirror comes down, Wolf, when you talk to people all of the White House, and so people privately, they are still very much worried about the Russian investigation. They still think that the president needs to get rid of Jeff Sessions, get rid of Rod Rosenstein, now, obviously, none of that's going to happen. This is something Myron needs to discuss the council. That's the way the convention works. They are in no mood to play patty cake over here at this White House. This is not going to be a kumbaya moment by any stretch. I think when the president comes out here, this is the president who feels like he's finished one battle, he's ready to start another. Okay. Yeah, I know. I'll lean forward. I'll put the IFB box up here, so it's sorry. Sorry, Jeff.
No, that's why I'm
confirmation for a lot of federal judgeships that he's trying to get pushed through. Should Ruth Bader Ginsburg or Justice Sotomayor decide to retire before 2020, and I'm sure Democrats will do everything they possibly can, that it puts him in a good position to get those confirmations through. The fact that Michael Wine won in Ohio and Rick DeSantis won the governorship in Florida helps the president in the 2020 elections because he has now got Republican governors who can work those states for him. And of course, those are two big battlegrounds. The question going forward is, what is the relationship going to be like between the House and the one on drug pricing, may be able to do something on infrastructure, but they are expecting that there is going to be a blue way. The incoming White House counsel, Pat Cipollone, is going to have his work cut out for him. And I think there's every chance here that the Democrats are going to try to tie the president in knots all the way through the next 2 years and 2 months, just to try to set themselves up well for November of 2020. So you're going to hear the president come out here and say that this was a positive for him. We'll see if he blames anybody for the House losses, and we'll hear what he expects for the way forward. And of course, then there's a lot of other thorny issues. Will they be subpoenaing the president's tax returns? All kinds of things to ask the president this morning, Bill and Sandra. There's no question that this is a long time. The last one in the Easter end, as my former colleague Mark Nolan points out, went 1 hour and 17 minutes. So hey, get your popcorn out, hang on to your seats, because here we go. Well, he hasn't press conference. So when he steps up to the podium in the next few minutes, and he's already running about 7 minutes late, that's going to be the first opportunity that we have had to hear from him on what his thinking is between the time that he went to bed and the time that he woke up today, other than some tweets. And one of the tweets I found most interesting, you talked to Sean Spicer about this earlier, was the one saying Nancy Pelosi should be Speaker of the House. She deserves it. She's worked hard for it. I mean, how far into his cheek did the president have his tongue when he wrote that? That's why so many Democrats don't want her to be Speaker of the House. I heard him say that. Yeah, it backfired on them when they impeached President Clinton. So if that's the drumbeat that the Democrats plan to follow for the next couple of years, if history is any guide, it may not suit them well in 2020. So
Lighting in here is terrible. Is that frequently? Why?
Spot I got rated to lunch.
I heard he doesn't like all the lights. Makes him look worse though without them. Yeah. They did the same thing at that press conference in New York during the event. Yeah, somewhere.
My shoulders.
Yeah. We're all working off of 3 hours. I was supposed to stop watching last night.
I tried to go back
accompanied by the Vice President of the United States.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Please. Thank you. It was a big day yesterday, an incredible day. And last night, the Republican Party defied history to expand our centers and special interests and a very hostile media coverage, to put it mildly. The media coverage set a new record and a new standard. We also had a staggering number of House retirements. These are seats that could have been held pretty easily, and we had newcomers going in, and a lot of them worked very hard, but it's very difficult when you have that many retirements. We held a large number of candidates, achieved tremendous success last night. As an example of the 11 candidates we campaigned with during the last week, 9 last night. This vigorous campaigning stopped the blue wave that they talked about. I don't know if there ever was such a thing, but could have been. If we didn't do the campaigning, probably there could have been. And the history really will see what a good job we did in the final couple in terms of, but they will be none. This election marks the largest Senate gains for a president's party in a first midterm election, at least President Kennedy's in 1962. There have been only 4 midterm elections since 1934 in which a president's party has gained even a single Senate seat. As of now, we picked up, it looks like 3. Could be 4, perhaps it could be 2, but we picked up a lot. And most likely the number will be 3. You people probably know that better than of Republican senators in the last 100 years. In the last 80 years, a sitting president's party has only gained a cumulative total of 8 Senate seats, averaging 1 per decade. So if we picked up 2, 3, or 4, that's a big percentage of that number. So in the last 80 years, you think of that. Only 8 seats. In President Obama's first midterm election, he lost 6 Senate seats, including in the deep blue state of Massachusetts. Republicans captured at least 4 held by Democrat incumbents, and these are tremendously talented, hardworking people that did this. Indiana, North Dakota, Florida, Missouri. We also won 2 open Senate seats in Tennessee, Marcia, and in Utah. And looking very good, really very good. She's done a terrific job. That was a tough race, and she's done a fantastic job. In each of these open seats, Democrats recruited very strong candidates with substantial fundraising and media support. We were getting bombarded with money on the other side. In the House, Republicans dramatically outperformed historical precedents and overcame a number of retirements, the most House Republican retirements in 88 years, that in many cases they were chairman of committees, and they left because they weren't chairman, because the Republicans have a rule for 6 years. What that does is wonderful in one way. It lets people come through the system and become chairman. In another way, it drives people out, because when they're a chairman, they don't want to go and not be a chairman. You're the chairman of a committee, and you're a big deal, and all of a sudden, you're not doing that anymore. So they leave. We had a lot of them leave. It's, I guess you can flip a coin as to which system is better. The Democrats do the other. Some of their folks in committees for a long time as chairman. In 2010, President Obama's first 7 House seats or something, and we'll figure that out pretty soon. We also had a slew of historic wins. The governor's races were incredible, against very well-funded, talented, and skilled Democrat candidates and people that worked very, very hard, respectfully, for those candidates, like Oprah Winfrey, who I like, I don't know if she likes me anymore, but that's okay. She used to. But she worked very hard in Georgia, very, very hard. And if you look at them, with 4 governors' races crucial to 2020 and Georgia, the big ones, Florida, Iowa, Ohio, and Georgia. Can't get much more important than that. They were incredible. They were actually incredible campaigns, too, incredible. As of right now, Republicans will control the majority of governorships across the country, including 3 great women who worked very hard, governors of Alabama, South Dakota, and Iowa. They worked very, very hard. They're very talented. By expanding our Senate majority, the voters have also clearly rebuked I think, was tremendous energy was given to the Republican Party by the way they treated Judge Kavanaugh, now Justice Kavanaugh, and expressed their support for confirming more great pro-Constitution judges. Candidates who embraced our message of low taxes, low regulations, low crime, strong borders, and great judges excelled last night. They excelled. They really, I mean, we have a list of people that Andy Barr was fantastic. I went to Kentucky. For the most part, I didn't campaign for the House, but I did actually make a special trip for Andy Barr because he was in a very tough race in Kentucky, and he won. That was a very tough race. The polls were all showing that he was down, and down substantially, and he won. And that one I did do. Pete Stauber of Minnesota, great guy, he's new, and ran a fantastic race. On the other hand, you had some that decided to, let's stay away. They did very poorly. I'm not sure that I should be happy or sad. Go ahead, Mike. Mia Love. I saw Mia Love. She'd call me all the time to help her with a hostage situation, being held hostage in Venezuela. But Mia Love gave me no love, and she lost. Too bad. Sorry about that, Mia. And Barbara Comstock was another one. I mean, I think she could have won that race, but she didn't want to have any embrace. For that, I don't blame her. But she's Eric Paulson didn't want the embrace. And in New Jersey, I think he could have done well, but it didn't work out too good. Bob Eugen, I feel badly because I think that's something that could have been won. That's a race that could have been won. John Faso, those are some of the people that, decided for their own reason not to embrace whether it's me or what we stand for, but what we stand for meant a lot to most people. And we've had tremendous support, and tremendous support in the Republican Party, among the biggest support in the history of America is booming like never before. Doing fantastic. We have Larry Kudlow here, and he said the numbers are as good as he's ever seen numbers at any time for our country. But he's a young man, so he hasn't seen that many numbers. Where's Larry? You're a young man, right, Larry? And you haven't been doing this too long, but they're as good as you've ever seen. And we may have, if you have a question for Larry, we'll do that. But I want to send my warmest appreciation and regards to Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. We really worked. And also to perhaps, looks like, I would think, Speaker Nancy Pelosi. And I give her a lot of credit. She works very hard, and she's worked long and hard. I give her a great deal of credit for what she's done and what she's accomplished. Hopefully we can all work together next year to continue delivering for the American people, including on economic growth, infrastructure, trade, lowering the cost of prescription drugs. These are some of the things that the Democrats do want to work on, and I really believe we'll be able to do that. I think we're going to have a lot lot of reason to do it. And two, or one, or three. It would have been very hard out of that many Republicans to ever even get support among Republicans, because there'll always be one or two or three people that, for good reason or for bad reason or for grandstanding, we have that too. You've seen that. You've seen that, plenty of grandstanding. But for certain reasons, that many people, you're always going to have a couple that won't do it. So that puts us in a very bad position. In other words, had we kept, and this is no, I'm saying this for a very basic reason, it's common sense. It puts us in a very tough position. We want this, and all of a sudden we wouldn't even be able to get it in many cases out of the Republicans' hands before we sent it on to the Senate. And now we have a much easier path, because the Democrats will come to us with a plan for infrastructure, a plan for health care, a plan for whatever they are looking at, and we'll negotiate. And as you know, it's been very hard in the Senate because we need essentially 10 votes from Democrats, and we don't get those votes because the Democrats do really stick together. And what happens? It doesn't get passed. Even if it gets out of the House, it doesn't get passed. So under the new concept of what we're doing, I say, come on, let me see what you have. They want to do things. You know, I keep hearing about investigations, fatigue. Like almost from the time I announced I was going to run, they've been giving us this investigation, elements that should not have taken place. And all you're going to do is end up in back and forth and back and forth, and 2 years is going to go up, and we won't have done a thing. I respected what Nancy said last night about bipartisanship and getting together and uniting. She used the word uniting, and she used the bipartisanship statement, which is so important because that's what we should be doing. So we can look at us, they can look at us, and then we can look at them, and it'll go back and forth. I'm better at that game than they are, actually. But we'll find out. I mean, you know, we'll find out. Or we can work together. You can't do them simultaneously, but you can do them both. No, you can't. Because if they're doing that, we're not doing the other, just so you understand. So we won't be doing that. But now what happens is we send it to the Senate, and we'll get 100% Democrat support, and we'll get some Republican support. And if it's good, I really believe we have Republicans with the approval process, and they will really help with the approval process. So it really could be a beautiful bipartisan type of situation. If we won by the way, they'll come to me, we'll negotiate, maybe we'll make a deal, maybe we won't. That's possible. But we have a lot of things in common on infrastructure. We want to do something on health care. They want to do something on health care. There are a lot of great things that we can do together. And now we'll send it up, and we'll get the Democrats, and we'll get the Republicans or some of the Republicans. And I'll make sure that we send something up that the Republicans can support. And they're going to want to make sure they send something up that the Democrats can support. The USMCA and South Korea is finished. USMCA has gotten rave reviews. We're not going to lose companies anymore to other countries. They're not going to do that because they have a tremendous economic incentive, meaning it's prohibitive for them to do that. So it's not going to be like NAFTA, which is one of the worst deals I've ever seen, although we've made some other pretty bad ones too. Now is the time for members of both parties to join together, put partisanship aside, and keep the American miracles, presidents, prime ministers. They all congratulate me. Almost the first thing we've done economically, because it is really amazing. And our steel industry is back. Our aluminum industry is starting to do really well. These are industries that were dead. Our miners are working again. We must all work together to protect our military. We have to do that. To support our law enforcement, secure our borders, and advance really great policy, including environmental policy. We want crystal clean water. We want ourselves at a disadvantage to other countries who are very competitive with us and who don't abide by the rules at all. We don't want to hurt our jobs. We don't want to hurt our factories. We don't want companies leaving. We want to be totally competitive, and we are. And right now we have just about the cleanest air, the cleanest water we've ever had, and it's always going to be that way. We insist on it. So environmental is very important to me. And with that, I'll take a few questions if you'd like. Whoa. I didn't know what happened. All right, go ahead, John. That was a lot of hand shooting up so quickly.
Mr. President, you talked at length just now about bipartisanship. The presumed Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, talked about it last night. I'm sure that's encouraging for the American people. But do you really believe, given what the relationship has been like between this White House and the Democratic Party, that that will happen?
I think there's a good chance, John. I think there's a very good chance.
In 2020. And do you expect that when the Democrats take over the chairmanship of all these important committees, you're going to get hit with a blizzard of subpoenas on everything from the Russia investigation to your tax returns?
Ready? Then you're going to, if that happens, then we're going to do the same thing, and government comes to a halt. And I would blame them, because they now are going to be coming up with policy. They're the majority in the House. I expect that they will come up with some fantastic ideas that I can support on the environment, on so many different things, including prescription drug prices, which we've made a big dent in already, including some of the other elements that we want. There are many things we can get along on without a lot of trouble, that we agree very much with them and they agree with us. I would like to see, I'd like to see unity, and I think we have a very good chance of, and maybe not on everything, but I think we have a very good chance of seeing that. Go ahead.
One question on the lame duck, sir, and one on your cabinet. You toyed with the idea during the campaign of a shutdown before the midterms in order to secure border wall funding. Are you prepared to go on a shutdown strategy during the lame duck, since this might be your last best chance?
Not necessarily
to secure that.
Sense. Look, I speak to Democrats all the time.
But you want much more money, and you want much sooner.
No, we need the money to build the wall, the whole wall, not pieces of it all over. And we are doing it. Now we have the military. We have other elements of a wall that are pretty nasty, to be honest with you, but nevertheless, it's pretty hard to get through it. But no, I'd like to see the wall. Many of the people that we'll be dealing with, in 2006, they approved the wall, essentially. It was a very strong border fence, but it was the same thing. And they all approved it. They all agreed. I have statements from every one of them. We have them saying, we need the wall. I mean, they sound like me. Mm-hmm. But we do need it, because we have people coming, and I'm not just talking about the caravans. We have people coming through our border, and even if you did, tremendous fighting would ensue. So we need the wall. Many Democrats know we need the wall, and we're just going to have to see what happens. I mean, I will be fighting for it. They have done everything in their power to make sure. I got the military, $700 billion and $716 billion. The wall is a tiny, tiny fraction of the cost of that. But their whole agenda has been to try not giving me anything for the wall. I'd rather answer that at a little bit different time. We're looking at a lot of different things, including cabinet. I'm very happy with most of my cabinet. We're looking at different people for different positions after the midterms. I didn't want to do anything before the midterms. But I will tell you that, for the most part, I'm extremely happy with my cabinet. I think Mike Pompeo has fit in so beautifully. He's done an incredible job.
How about your Interior Secretary?
We're looking at that, and I do want to study whatever is being said.
Is he in jeopardy?
I think he's doing a job. But wow, this is. Go ahead, John. He gave me a fair interview the other day, so I might as well ask him a question.
Mr. President, and picking up there, you told me the other day that you are an open book. So
I think I am an open book.
So point blank, Democrats go after your tax returns. Will you try to block that, or will you allow them to have them?
Well, look, as I've told you, they're under audit. They have been for a long time. They're extremely complex. People wouldn't understand them. They're done by among the biggest and best law firms in the country. Same thing with the accounting firms. The accountants are a very, very large, powerful firm from the standpoint of they put them in. But people don't understand tax returns. Now, I did do a filing of over 100 pages, I believe, which is in the offices, and when people went and saw that filing and they saw the magnitude of it, they were very disappointed. And they saw the, the detail. You'd get far more from that. And I guess we filed that now 3 times. But you get far more from that than you could ever get from a tax return. But when you're under audit, and I'm on a very continuous audit because there are so many companies, and it is a very big company, far bigger than you would even understand. But it's a great company, but it's big. Finished with the audit, I would have an open mind to it, I would say that. But I don't want to do it during the audit. And really, no lawyer, even from the other side, they say often, not always, but when you're under audit, you don't subject it to that. You get it done, and then you release it. So when that happens, if that happens, I would certainly have an open mind to it.
So that means if the audit is still on, you will not turn over the tax returns, or you'll fight to block it?
When it's under audit, no, nobody would. Nobody turns over a return when it's under audit, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead, please.
One, I was tempted to ask you. I think I'll go on to the question that.
Why do I like Oprah? What kind of a question is it?
Yeah, I'm just asking, just curious. But the
He's
real
He's a
question.
comedian here.
The real question is.
I do like Oprah, by the way. I do. She was a person I knew well, came to my place in Palm Beach often, and I have a lot of respect for her. Unfortunately, she didn't do the trick.
The real question is, you just sat up here and you're saying that
Negotiation. Not at all.
if they start investigating you, that you can play that game and can you compartmentalize that?
And I think I know more than they know.
Can you compartmentalize that and still continue to work with them for the benefit of the rest of the country,
No.
or are all bets off?
No. If they do that, then it's just all it is a warlike posture.
And
Yeah,
so then,
go
wait a minute, then the follow-up, I'm sorry, John.
You heard my answer. Go ahead.
Well, since it's Jim,
Moving up from Central America towards the border with the U.S.
Thank you for telling
And
me that. I appreciate it.
why did you characterize it as such?
Because I consider it an invasion. You and I have a difference of opinion.
But do you think that you, in
Not
this
at all.
election,
No, not
to
at all.
try to keep...
I want them to come into the country, but they have to come in legally. They have to come in, Jim, through a process. I want it to be a process. And I want people to come in, and we need the people.
Your campaign...
Wait. You know why we need the people, don't you? Because we have hundreds of companies moving in. We need the people.
But your campaign had an ad show climbing over walls.
Do you think they were actors? They weren't actors. They didn't come from Hollywood. These were people, this was an actual, it happened a few days ago.
Hundreds of miles away, though. They're hundreds and hundreds of
You know
miles
what?
away.
I
That's
think
not an
you
invasion.
should, honestly, I think you should let me run the country. You run CNN.
All right.
And if you did it well, your ratings
Let
would
me
be
ask,
much better.
if I may
Okay,
ask
that's
one other
enough.
question. Mr. President, if I may ask
Peter,
one
go
other
ahead.
question. Are you worried?
That's enough. That's
Mr.
enough.
President, I
That's
was going
enough.
to ask one of the other folks. have
That's
had-
enough.
Pardon me, ma'am. Mr.
Excuse
President,
me. That's enough.
Mr. President, I had one other
Peter,
question,
let's
if
go.
I may ask, on the Russia investigation. Are you concerned that you may have
I'm not concerned
indictments-
about anything with
that you
the
may have
Russian
indictments coming down?
investigation because it's a hoax.
Mr. President,
I'll tell you what, CNN should be ashamed of itself having you working for them. You are a rude, terrible working for CNN. Go ahead.
I think that's unfair.
You're a
I've
very
worked-
rude person. The way you treat Sarah Huckabee is horrible. And the way you treat other people are horrible. You shouldn't treat people that way. Go ahead. Go ahead, Peter, go ahead.
In Jim's defense, I've traveled with him and watched him. He's a diligent reporter who busts
Well,
his
I'm
butt
not a
like the
big
rest
fan
of
of
us.
yours either, so
I understand.
to be honest with
So let me ask you a question if I can. You repeatedly
you.
said,
You aren't the best.
Mr. President, you repeatedly, over the course
Okay,
of the...
just sit down, please. Well, when you report fake news, no. Go ahead.
Mr. President, over the course of the last several days of the campaign, sir, at the end of the campaign, you repeatedly said that Americans need to fear Democrats. You said a wave of violent crime that endangers families everywhere. Why are you
Because
pitting
they're very weak on
Americans?
crime.
Why are
Excuse
you
me.
pitting Americans
Peter.
against one another, sir?
Peter, what are you trying to be him?
No, I'm
Peter,
just
let
asking
me
the question.
Let me just tell you. Very simple. Because they're very weak on crime. Because they have often suggested, members and people within the Democrat Party at a high level have suggested getting rid of ICE, getting rid of law enforcement. That's not going to happen, okay? We want to be strong on the borders. We want to be strong on law enforcement. And I want to cherish ICE because recognized how good a job they do. So we want to take care of them, and we want to hold them very close because they do a good job.
But the question,
Okay,
the question,
thank you
sir,
very
is,
much.
why are you
sit down?
But the question, but you didn't answer my question. Just very simply, the question is, why are you pitting Americans against one another, sir?
I'm not.
Is that how you view
No, I'm not.
citizens
Well,
of
look,
this country?
I'll tell you what. We won a lot of elections last night We did very well last night.
But in many ways,
I
it
think it's
divided
going
the
to
country.
I think it's going to have a very positive impact. I watched NBC this morning. They didn't report it exactly correctly, but that's, that's the fact with NBC. Nothing I can do about that. But I want this country to have important. And I think when you don't have it, you are indeed unleashing crime. I feel that.
You said you would sign an executive order on birthright citizenship. Are you still going to sign the executive birthright citizenship
You'll
this
ask
week?
me that question a little bit later. Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. President. The investigation by the special counsel Robert Mueller has been going on since last spring. It's been over your head.
It's been a long time.
Yeah, it's been over your head, over Republicans' head, during the midterms as well. Is this an opportunity for you, Mr. President, to end that investigation? Would you consider removing Mr. Mueller from his position?
I could have ended it any time I wanted. I didn't. And there was no collusion. Problems from years ago. They went after people with loans and other things. Had nothing to do with my campaign. This is a investigation where many, many millions of dollars has been spent, and there's no collusion. It was supposed to be on collusion. There's no collusion, and I think it's very bad for our country. I will tell you. I think it's a shame. And a poll came out today. By the way, the other thing is they should look at the other side also. They only look at one side. They're not looking at all of the things that came up during this investigation. They don't do that. They should not 13 or 14 or 17. I call them the angry Democrats. They are angry people. And it's a very unfair thing for this country. It's a very, very, forget about unfair to me, it's very bad for our country. Okay.
So, Mr. President, if it's
Go ahead.
Mr. President, just wait,
Please.
just a moment. If it's unfair to the country and it's costing millions of dollars.
I will give you voter suppression. You just have to sit down, please. Sit down. I didn't call you. I didn't call you. I didn't call you. I'll give you suppression. Take a look at the CNN polls, how inaccurate they were. That's called voter suppression. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. President.
I'm not responding. I'm responding to. Excuse me. I'm not responding to you. I'm talking to this gentleman. Would you please sit down? Excuse me. Excuse me. Would you please sit down? Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. Now that the House of Representatives
Very hostile.
has
It's such a hostile media. It's so sad. You ask me about. No, you rudely interrupted him.
the United States Congress on immigration in exchange for a DACA fix, in exchange for an amnesty for 1.7 million. Are you willing to change any of those demands that you Congress earlier?
I think we could really do something having to do with DACA. And what really happened with DACA, we could have done some pretty good work on DACA, but a judge ruled that DACA was okay. Had the judge not ruled that way, I think we would have made a deal. Once the judge ruled that way, the Democrats didn't want to talk anymore. So we'll see how it works out at the Supreme Court.
Do you still...
Go ahead. From where? Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Jennifer?
Yeah.
Go ahead, ma'am. Go ahead. Take the. Oh. Either one. Either one.
Okay.
Or both. Are you
Mr.
together? Go ahead.
We're not together. Mr. President, how do you respond to critics who say that your message on the campaign towards minorities have been polarizing?
I don't think it has been at all.
But is the election of two Muslim women, one of them is veiled to the House, which is making history. Is this a rebuke of this message,
I don't
do you
understand
think?
what you're saying. What?
But is it a rebuke of this message? Do you think that this is more reflective of multi-ethnic and multi...
That took place 2 or 3 days ago, the poll. I have the best numbers with African American and Hispanic American that I've ever had before. Then you say this, you look at median income, you look at all of the employment and unemployment numbers, they're doing the best they've ever done. And it reflects, it really is very reflective in the polls. Yes, go ahead.
Mr. President, I'm from Brooklyn, so you'll understand me.
I understand you very well.
My question is on health care. How is it possible to keep premiums down?
If you look at the Department of Labor, also Secretary Azar, what they've done, they've come up with some health care plans, which is causing great competition and driving the prices right down. But we are getting rid of the individual mandate because it was very unfair to a lot of people. But at the same time, we're covering the people that need it. But the individual mandate was a disaster because people that couldn't necessarily afford it were having to pay for the privilege of not having to pay for health care, and it was bad health care at that. So we are working many plans for health care. We're creating tremendous competition. We had Obamacare repealed and replaced. Vote. We would have repealed it, replaced it. We would have had a large-scale, very good health care plan. Now we're doing it a different way. We're doing it a different way. But getting rid of the individual mandate is a very, very popular thing and a very important thing, and people very much appreciate it. Go ahead. No, that's enough. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, sir. Two questions. One, I know you went through the results and you obviously studied them late last night. What lesson did you learn most from looking at those results? Was there one thing that, as you kind of reviewed them, that you'll change your strategy, not just for Congress, but kind of going forward? And then just a follow-up question.
Well, I think the results that I've learned, and maybe, and it was very hard to do it with people in Congress because there's just too many. There would be too many stops. But I did it with the Senate. I did it with Andy Barr, as you know, and he won. He won a very tough race against McGrath. It was a very, very tough race in Kentucky, and he was down quite a bit, and I went there, and we had a tremendous, very successful, some of you were at that rally, and he won that race. But I could only do that so much because there are just so many. But I did focus on the Senate, and we had tremendous success with the Senate, really tremendous.
Can I add to 2020? Do you want to lock down your ticket right now, sir? Will the vice president be your running mate in 2020?
Well, I haven't asked him, but I hope so. Where are you? Mike, will you be my running mate? Stand up, Mike, please. Raise your right hand. No, I'm only kidding. Will you? Thank you. Okay, good. The answer is yes. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
That was unexpected, but I feel very fine. Yeah, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Going back to the Russia investigation and the potential investigations from the now Democratic majority in Congress, some say that you could stop all this by...
It should have never been started because there was no crime. Everybody has conflicts. They all have conflicts over there that are beyond anything that anybody's ever seen in terms of conflicts. From the fact that people ask for jobs, from the fact that they have very good friends on the other side, like really good friends like Comey, who, by the way, lied and leaked, and also leaked classified information. Nothing happened there. It might, perhaps, maybe something's happening that I don't know about. I stay away from it. But you know what I do? I let it just go on. They're wasting a lot of money because I don't want to do that. But you're right. I could end it right now. I could say that investigation is over. But it's really, it's a disgrace, frankly. And it's an embarrassment to our country. It's an embarrassment to the people of our country. And it's too bad. Go ahead.
What about the declassification of the documents?
It's amazing how people on the other side just don't want those documents declassified. But no, we're looking at that very carefully. I certainly wanted to wait.
Can I ask you one more question, Mr. President? Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. You have campaigned as a pro-life president. You have defended the rights of unborn children. You now have a divided Congress. It's unlikely to pass any pro-life bills.
Very tough issue.
How are you going to push forward your pro-life agenda?
Just going to push. I've been pushing. I've done a very good job, too. We're very happy with me. But it's a tough issue for the two sides. There's no question about it.
But what are you going to do?
There is great division. What am I going to do? I won't be able to explain that to you because it is an issue, solution, and nobody else does. We're going to be working on that. Yes, go ahead, please. She took your place, but that's okay.
Mr. President, just a quick question on rural America. In states like Indiana, North Dakota, folks turned out for Republican candidates. Could you talk a little bit about what this means for your agenda in terms of trade and the Farm Bill?
The Farm Bill is working really well. I mean, we could have had it approved any time, but we're looking to get work. Just don't want to vote for that. So at some point they'll have.
Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Have you seen any evidence that Russia or China intervened in yesterday's election?
Well, we're going to make a full report, and unlike the previous administration, we've done a lot of work on that issue. And if you look, speak with the FBI, speak with the Department of Justice, speak to Homeland Security, We've spent a lot of time. It gets very little coverage in the papers. I mean, you cover the nonsense part, but you don't cover the important. This is very important. And Russia and everybody else looking into our elections or meddling with our elections, but people tend not to write about it. But we have worked very hard, as you've probably heard.
What do you intend to say, sir, to President Putin when you meet with them later this month?
Well, I have a good relationship with both. I know President Xi better, but I think I have a very good relationship with both. I actually had a very good meeting in Russia that you people didn't agree with, but that's okay. It doesn't much matter, obviously, because
You
here
mean
I am.
Helsinki?
But the fact is that I had a very, very good meeting, with President Putin, and a lot was discussed about security, about Syria, about Ukraine be taken, and right now you have submarines off that particular parcel that we're talking about. You know what I'm talking
That was
about.
President Putin who annexed Crimea, sir.
That was President Obama's regime. That was during President Obama, right? That was not during me.
But it
That
was
during-
President
No, that was
Putin, sir, who
President
did the
Obama.
annexation.
No, it was President Obama that allowed it to happen. Had nothing to do with me. Okay, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. Cordelia Lynch, Sky News. You're a man who likes to win, but last night was not an absolute victory for you.
I'll be honest. I thought it was a very close to complete. From the standpoint of negotiation, when you look at it from the standpoint of deal making, because it's all about deal making. Again, if we had the majority and we had 1 or 2 or 3 votes to play with, we would have been at a standstill. I really believe that we have a chance to get along very well with the Democrats. And if that's the case, so I consider it to be, hey, look, I won Georgia. President Obama campaigned very hard in Georgia. Oprah Winfrey campaigned very, very hard all over the television. I said, this is going to be tough. I only had me. I didn't have anybody else. And I went to Georgia, and we had one of the largest crowds that anybody here has seen ever at a political rally. And you know what? He won. And he won actually by, pretty good margin. He won. And then we went to Florida, and they had celebrities all over. And a man who happens to be a very smart person. They're going to have a great governor of the state of Florida. And then we talked about the Senate. And a lot of money was pouring in. Democrat. This is a man who's been in office for like 44 years or something. This is a man who's like a professional at getting elected and being at office. So he's not, Bill Nelson, not easy to beat, okay? But they had a lot of celebrity coming out for Nelson. They had everybody coming out for Nelson. And Rick Scott won, and I helped him. And I think we've done an amazing job. And you could look at many other places. You just take a look at some of the other places. And we just got the word that in Iowa, I think it was a great victory. I'll be honest. I think it was a great victory. And actually, some of the news this morning was that it was, in fact, a great victory. But if you look at it from the standpoint of gridlock, I really believe there's going to be much less gridlock because of the way this is going than any other way. Wait, sit down, please. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let me ask you about one of the campaign promises you made down the stretch, which was a 10% tax cut for the middle class.
Yeah.
You just talked about gridlock. Democrats, they now run the House Ways and Means Committee. Tax cut of some kind for the middle class, but that means raising rates elsewhere. Corporations on the wealth.
Need 10 Democrat votes. We probably couldn't get them. If we could pass it very easily in the House, but there's no reason to waste time because you don't have the votes in the Senate. But if as an example, if the Democrats come up with an idea for tax cuts, which I'm a big believer in tax cuts, I would absolutely pursue something, even if it means some adjustment.
Some adjustment on which side, the corporate, the individual?
Yeah, to make it possible. But I would love to see a tax cut for the middle class. Now, that's going to be their decision. They're going to have to make that decision. As you know, if we bring it up to the Senate, we'd need Democrat votes, 10, and we don't have those 10 votes.
And just because the markets would that be 1%, 2%, 3% on either side? It's too early.
I'm just saying, I would be certainly willing to do a little bit of an adjustment. Go ahead, behind.
Thank you.
Go ahead, please.
Mr. President, thank you very much. 2 questions. One is, you had talked about leaders who had called to congratulate you. Did President Putin call to congratulate you? And will you, in fact, meet with him at lunch this coming weekend.
Well, as I understand, I'll be there. I believe President Putin is going to be there. We don't have anything scheduled. I don't think we have anything scheduled in Paris. I'm going over. This is a great event. This is an important, really, this is going to be a very important and I think a very beautiful ceremony. I'm looking forward to going, and we're representing the incredible heroes of the world, but the heroes of our country from World War I. And so I'll be going there, and I am very proud to go there.
Did he call you?
I don't think we have time set aside for that meeting. Now, with that being said, we're very shortly meeting again at the G20, where he'll be there, and I'll be there, and that's where we're actually looking forward.
You, since this is quite a gathering we've got here, to go ahead and talk about the staff changes that you expect in the White House. Been talking about leaving. General Kelly has been rumored to be leaving.
No, people leave. People leave.
And is that going to happen?
People leave. I haven't heard about John Kelly, but no, people leave. They come in, they're here. It's a very exhausting job, although I love doing it, I must tell you, but it's exhausting for a lot of people. I'm surprised at a lot of people. They start off, they're young people, they're there for 2 years, and they're old when they leave. It's quite exhausting, but I love doing it, and I'll tell you, there will be changes, nothing. I mean, we have many people lined up for every single position. Any position, everybody wants to work in this White House. We are a hot country. This is a White House. We are a White House that people want to work with. Okay. No, please, behind you. Go ahead.
President, this has been a very challenging campaign. This has been a
It's
very
been
challenging campaign.
a very challenging campaign.
It has
That's
involved
true.
quite a lot of abuse and a lot of violence. People have died during the course of this campaign.
Right.
Is there any way in which you think the temperature could, perhaps peace could break out with the media? Perhaps your bipartisan relationships across the House?
I would love to see unity and peace and love and any other word you want to use. And obviously, I think we had to, especially at this particular juncture, we had to wait till after the midterms are over. Now they're over. If they would cover me fairly, which they don't, I'm not saying that in a hostile way. I get extremely inaccurate coverage. I can do something that's fantastic, and they'll make it look like not good. And I don't mind having bad stories. If I make a mistake, cover it fairly, but cover it. But when you do something terrific, look how little at CNN, but how little the three networks talk about how good the economy is. How little. Almost not at all. If President Obama had this economy, and by the way, if that administration through somebody else kept going, you would have had negative 4.2 instead of positive 4.2% growth. You would have had negative. It was heading down. But here, the point is this, excuse me. I would love to see unity, including with the media. Because I think the media, I'll be honest, I think it's a very divisive thing for our country. And you would be amazed at how smart people are that are reading your story. Get it. And it really does bring disunity. I didn't, excuse me. You are not called on. Go ahead, please.
About Turkey. Thank you, President Trump. Shortly after your victory speech on the historic night of back in November 2016, I asked you to what single factor you most attributed this victory to.
Said you have to speak up.
Sure. On the night of your victory, I asked you, right after your speech, to what you would attribute your victory. You pointed up to it was God. Based off of that, how would you say over the last 2 years?
Factor in the lives of many people that I know very well in this room, like your vice president. God plays a very big role in my life.
And one more back to a quick follow-up. Which loss last night surprised you the most, and which of these unsuccessful candidates are you most likely to consider for
Nothing
future
surprises
administration?
me in politics.
Would you
but there were some
any of
losses last night, and there were some victories last night that have been incredible. I mean, there were victories last night that nobody would believe, especially based on the suppression polls. They had a lot of suppression polls.
Would you
and there were some victories last night that were very surprising, but I'm not going to pick out special.
Would you consider
people.
any for
It's
a
tough
post,
enough for those people.
Administration post moving forward as one of the very few of the 3.7% unemployed?
What?
would you consider any of the people who lost last night for a post in the administration in the near future?
I know a couple of very good ones. Yeah, I would, actually. Go ahead, please.
Mr. President, I asked you on Monday if there was anything that you regret in your first 2 years. Their breath on that happening. Will you indeed have to change your tone if you're to get things passed through Congress after losing the House? You also said you might extend an olive branch. What would that look like?
I would love to have. I'd be very good at a low tone. But when things are done not correctly about you, written about you, said about you, on television, on wherever it is, you have to defend yourself. I would love to do very even tone, much easier than what I have to do. I have to go around, and going around is much easier than facing and being treated fairly. But when you're not treated fairly, you really have no choice. I would love to have but you know what? When you have to fight, all the time fight, because you're being misrepresented by the media, you really can't do that.
But not about the media, sir. About the media, but what about with Congress?
Please, go ahead.
Mr. President, can you just how you focus on the economic?
Where are you from, please?
Japan.
Okay. Say hello. Say hello to Shinzo.
Yes.
I'm sure he's happy about tariffs on his cars. Go ahead.
That's my question, actually. So how you focus on the trade and economic issues with Japan? Will you ask Japan to do more, or will you?
I really don't understand you.
How will you focus on trade and economic issues?
Trade with Japan?
Yes.
Well, you have a great prime minister who just had a very successful election. He's a very good friend of mine. He's one of the people I'm closest with. But I tell you, Japan does not treat the United States fairly on trade. They send in millions of cars at a very low tax. They don't take our cars. And if they do, they have a massive tax on the cars. Japan, and I'm not blaming Japan, I'm blaming the people that were in charge of the United States for allowing that to happen. But as you know, we have close to a $100 billion trade deficit with Japan, and Japan has treated us very unfairly. But don't feel lonely, because you weren't the only one.
How about North Korea? How about North Korea?
North Korea have been postponed. What is happening there, and will your meeting still happen with...
We're going to change it because of trips that are being made. We're going to make it at another date. But we're very happy how it's going with North Korea. We think it's going fine. We're in no rush. We're in no hurry. The sanctions are on.
You still expect to meet Kim Jong-un?
Excuse me, wait.
Sorry, sir.
The sanctions are on. The missiles have stopped. The rockets have stopped. The hostages are home. They're coming home, and they're being provided to us as we speak. But I'm in no rush. I'm in no rush. The sanctions are on. I read a couple of times, and I've seen a few. So much. What have I done? I met. Now, I'd love to take the sanctions off, but they have to be responsive, too. It's a two-way street. But we're not in any rush at all. Could have done what I've done. But I'll say this very simply. We're in no rush. The sanctions are on, and whenever it is. But that meeting is going to be rescheduled.
That meeting with Kim Jong-un, sir, will it happen in the next month?
Sometime next year, I would say.
Sometime next year?
Sometime early next year.
And a quick question on the USMCA. Now that it's been concluded, have you repaired your relationship with Prime Minister Trudeau?
Yes, I have. We have a very good relationship.
Thank you very much. We've been talking a lot about everyone. Anti-Semitic incidents have increased by 57% since 2016. Hate crimes are on the rise. Why do you do about it?
It's very sad to see it. I hate to see it. And as you know, I've done more. In fact, if you were with us the last time we met, Prime Minister Netanyahu said that this president has done more for Israel than any other president. Those words, those exact words. Jerusalem, protection, working deepen. We built the embassy. That would have taken another 15 or 20 millions of dollars, and we did it for a tiny amount of money. It's already done. It's open. Nobody has done more for Israel than Donald Trump. And the nice part is that's not me saying it. That's Prime Minister Netanyahu.
But what about Mr. President, what about the divides in this country? Mr. President, what about healing the divides in this country and addressing those issues
we want to see it healed. And
specifically?
one of the things I think that can help heal is the success of our country. We are really successful now. Went up $11.7 trillion, tremendously. China would have superseded us in 2 years as an economic power. Now they're not. China got rid of their China 25 because I found it very insulting. I said that to them. I said China 25 is very insulting because China 25 means in 2025 they're going to take over economically the world. I said that's not happening. And we've gone way up. They've gone down. And I don't want them to go down. We'll have a good meeting and we're going to see what we can do. But I have to say this. Billions of dollars will soon be pouring into our treasury from taxes that China is already on China. He was on the other day saying he has never seen anything like it. And you know who else hasn't? China hasn't.
And Mr. President,
but we're going to try and make a deal with China because I want to have great relationships with President Xi, as I do, and also with China.
you're talking about the economic. How do you see your role as a moral leader?
Go ahead,
Mr.
please.
President, just
Go
how
ahead,
do you
please,
see your role as a
please.
moral
Go
leader?
ahead. There's so many people, I'm sorry.
As a moral
Go
leader,
ahead.
though.
I think I am a great moral leader, and I love our country. Go ahead, please.
Thank you,
At us, we look at them, it goes on for 2 years. Then at the end of 2 years, now what's bad for them is being in the majority, I'm just going to blame them. You understand? I'm going to blame them. They're the majority. Honestly, it makes it much simpler for me. They will be blamed. But I think Nancy Pelosi, and you know, I put that statement out on social media today about Nancy Pelosi, that if she's short of votes, because frankly, I think she deserves, and a lot of people thought I was being sarcastic or I was kidding. I wasn't. I think she deserves it. She's been fighting long for it. She's been fighting. I really mean this. There was nothing sarcastic about it, and you know, you have other people shooting at her, trying to take over the speakership. And I said, if we can and if we will, if she has a problem, I think I would be able to very easily supply her the necessary votes. That's not said in any way other than I really believe she deserves that position. I also believe that Nancy Pelosi and I can work together and get a lot of things done, along with Mitch and everybody else that we have to work with. I think we'll get a lot done.
Mr. President, why can't you?
Go ahead,
Mr.
please.
President, why
Go
can't you
ahead.
do that while subpoenas are?
Excuse me?
Why can't you work together while there are subpoenas or while there are investigations in process?
I think we will. Look, now then I see the hostility of questions in the room. I come in here as a nice person wanting to answer questions, and I have people jumping out of their seats, questions at me. No, the election's over, and I'm, I am extraordinarily happy. I really am. And by the way, I tell you if I wasn't, look at what happened in Florida. Look at what happened in Georgia. Look at what happened in so many locations with governorships. Nobody talks about the governorships. Look at the amount of work that was given to these other candidates against my candidate. And I'm extraordinarily happy. And if I wasn't, I'd let you know. There's nothing wrong. I mean, look, you look at midterms. We did unbelievably well. To win Florida, both the Senate and the governorship, against two talented people, I'll tell you what, we did incredibly. To win Georgia, when you had some of the biggest stars in the world campaigning endlessly, including President Obama, I tell you what, this was a great victory for us. And again, from a deal-making standpoint, we are all much better off the way it turned out. Because I really believe if the Democrats want to, they can do a tremendous amount of great legislation. Yes, please, go ahead. Tell me. You're never bored. I don't want to, hopefully not. I don't want to overstay, but yes, please, go ahead.
Hi, Mr. President. Yemi Shelsunder with PBS NewsHour. On the campaign trail, you called yourself a nationalist. Some people saw that as emboldening white nationalists. Now people are also
I don't
saying
know why you'd
that
say
the
that.
president.
That's such a racist
There are
question.
some people that say that now the Republican Party is seen as supporting white nationalists
Oh, I
because
don't
of your
believe
rhetoric.
that. I don't
What do
believe
you make
that.
of that?
I don't believe it. I don't know. Why do I have my highest poll numbers ever with African Americans? Why do I have among the highest poll numbers with African Americans? I mean, why do I have my highest poll numbers? That's such a racist question. Honestly, I mean, you have nationalists, you have globalists. I also love the world, and I don't mind helping the world, but we have to straighten out our country first. We have a lot of problems.
And
Excuse me, but to say that, what you said, is so insulting to me. It's a very terrible thing that you said.
And Mr.
Okay,
President,
please, go ahead.
Mr.
Go
President,
ahead.
people have you
Go
talked
ahead.
about
Excuse me.
middle class tax cuts on the campaign trail. How will you get Democrats to support that policy?
You have to ask them.
Well,
Hey,
what's your plan for
excuse
working
me.
with
You know
Democrats
what
on a
my
middle
plan
class
is?
tax plan?
You know what my plan is? I'll ask them. And if they say yes, I'm all for it. And if they say no, there's nothing you can do because you need their votes. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Francesca Chin, that you spent a lot of time talking about her and Chuck
Not a
Schumer.
question of want. I would have, so here's, let me answer a little. Would I have preferred winning by 2 or 3 or 4? I would almost have to think about that. But certainly, I like to win. And if I win, she's not going to be Speaker.
What did she say to you, though, yesterday that made
We had a
you
great
give her
conversation.
her support? your
Honestly,
support?
we had a very warm conversation. You know, she loves this country. And she's a very smart woman. She's done a very, she was really, I mean, she's had a very...
Did she promise
she's had
that
a
they
very-
wouldn't seek to impeach
She's
you?
had a very, we didn't talk about impeaching. We didn't talk, what do? Do you impeach somebody because he created the greatest economic success in the history of our country? Let's impeach him because the country is so successful. Let's impeach him. Has he done anything wrong? They asked somebody, has he done anything wrong? No, but let's impeach him anyway. And they also said, let's impeach Justice Kavanaugh. Let's impeach him. And now they have the second. After him, we're going to impeach the vice president. We're going to impeach Mike Pence. Mike Pence doesn't get impeached for anything. So let's the president, and then we'll impeach the vice president. These people are sick. And you know what? They have to get their bearing. Really, they have to get their bearing. And when you ask about division, they're the ones that cause the division. They cause tremendous division.
Okay,
Yeah,
regarding
go ahead,
all of the
please.
retirements in the House, Mr. President, very quickly, you suggested
Who
that...
is retiring?
You said that many of the retirements that happened in the House...
Many retirements, yeah.
That made it very difficult for you in this election cycle, and that it was because they were chairmen. I think that is. Whose fault is it that there
In
were so many
Jeff
retirements?
Flake's case, it's me, pure and simple. I retired him. I'm very proud of it. I did the country a great service. Go ahead, give him that, give him that. He is retired. I'd like to call it another word, but we're going to treat him with great respect. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Jeff Flake, that's another beauty. Go ahead.
2 questions, please.
No, one. Too many people.
All right.
Sorry.
All right. You seem to enjoy this venue very much. Are you going to make the standard press conference a staple of in 2 years, or
No.
will you have more briefings with
No.
Sarah Sanders?
You know, when I don't do I think Sarah horribly treated by a lot of
So
people.
she's gonna stay on as press
But it's
secretary.
very interesting because Sarah we were talking about it the other day. So I had a period where I figured, you know what I'll do? I won't do any real interviews. And then they started saying, why isn't he doing what? You know, they're all coming up with all kinds. Then over the last couple of months, I decided I'll do a lot. We'll stop at the helicopter. We'll do this. We'll do a lot of. And then they say, why is he doing so many press conferences? What's wrong? What? So when I don't do them, you say, what's wrong? When I do them, you say, what's wrong? And when I go in the middle, you say, what's wrong? But in the middle, you know that, John. Right? Yeah, sort of right. Okay, good. No, work well.
Mr. President, I didn't
It didn't
finish
work
the
well.
question. So Sarah will stay on as press secretary.
Okay, please, go ahead. No, go ahead.
First off, I personally think it's very good to have you here because a free press and this
I
type
do
of
too.
engagement.
Actually, I do too.
Yes, it's vital to
It's called
democracy.
earned media. It's worth billions. Go ahead.
So I have 2 questions for you, if that's all right. It's a rare opportunity. First, just a point of clarification on the tax returns issue. You brought up the audit. That doesn't prevent you from releasing them.
I know it. Oh, sure.
Right,
But
but it-
I didn't say it prevented me. I said lawyers will tell you not to do it.
But
Go
if
ahead.
the
What's your
Demo-
next?
just on
More
that-
exciting
okay.
question than that, please.
Second one, Michael Cohen recently said you called black voters stupid.
That's false.
Omarosa has accused you of using the N-word, and the
That's false.
rapper Little John has said you called him Uncle Tom. What's your response?
I don't know who Little John is. I really
was
don't.
on The Apprentice.
I don't know. Oh, he was? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Have you ever
I
made
don't know.
racist remarks?
No, I would never do that. Remarks. And years and years there are tapes. Number one, I never worried about it because I never did. I never used racist remarks. I've never used racist remarks. Okay.
Well, one point of fact, because you told her you have
Quiet,
the highest approval
quiet,
among
quiet,
African
quiet. Go
Americans.
ahead.
It's just 8%, sir, single digits.
See, when you talk about division, it's people like this that cause division. Great division. No, point of fact is that I never used a racist remark. That's the point of fact. Who are you from?
I'm from Yahoo News.
Yahoo, you?
President Erdogan, Turkey.
I know.
And you're going to meet him soon.
Just can't understand his
Okay,
speak.
you're going to meet him soon. You're going to have this talk. And some countries are going to take the same steps that President Erdogan is doing.
So let me just tell you about the oil, okay? Just recently, the strongest sanctions in the history of our country, just about. Well, I guess North Korea is there too. But I gave some countries, because of me, because you have a monopoly called OPEC. And I don't like, and I don't like that monopoly. I don't like it. And oil prices are coming down. So rather than deciding to be as tough as sanctions, what I've done is I said, we're not going to do it that way. We're going to let some of the oil go out to these countries that really do need it, because I don't want to drive the oil prices up to $100 or $150 a barrel, which could happen very easily. It's a very fragile market, very, very fragile. I know it very well, and it's the absolute right decision. And they'll get tougher as time goes by. Maybe that to be a tax, and I don't like taxes.
We have a peace process between
Go
Israel
ahead,
and Palestine.
Please.
The peace process is over.
Who? Oh, congratulations. Congratulations. I'm sure you're very unhappy about that. Go ahead.
Mr.
Yes,
President,
please, go ahead.
Can you address the...
We'll take a couple of more and then we'll go.
Can you address concerns in places like Georgia where people waited in line to vote for hours, where voting machines weren't working in certain districts, and
You
there
think that's
wasn't
the
power?
reason that the candidate lost?
Well, there are being raised that it wasn't.
I wasn't
for
involved
access
in
to-
Georgia.
I know, but
other than
as
other than I
president-
love the state. I
Yes,
do
but
love
as
the
president
state.
of the United...
Efficient in Georgia. I heard it was very efficient. But again, you'd have to ask the state governments, because just one of those things you're going to have to ask them. Please, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. You expressed some concerns about social media companies unfairly censoring conservatives during the election. Do you anticipate working with Democrats to regulate these companies, or are you satisfied with the way
I would do
things
that,
are?
yeah. I would look at that very seriously. I think it's a serious problem. At the same time, you start getting into speech. It's a very dangerous problem. That could be the beginning. So it's very dangerous. Believe it or not, I'm one that really likes free speech. A lot of people, but I would certainly talk to the Democrats if they want to do that, and I think they do want to do that. Yes, sir, go ahead.
Former Barack Obama famously said that he had a pen and a phone to use executive power on issues like immigration. Do you see yourself using executive power to get some of your immigration agenda done?
I do. I think that some of it I can use executive power on some, not all, but I mean, he certainly used it. He used it on DACA. And when he did it, he said something to the effect that, I'm not allowed to do this, it'll never hold up, but I'm doing it anyway. And he did it, and it's obviously going to be determined in the Supreme Court. And if the court rules in favor of what President Obama thinks they should rule, then I will probably have a deal with the Democrats in a very short period of time. We were very close to having a deal until we got that very strange ruling.
You also made some promises about immigration during the campaign, and I want to know if you're going to follow through with them. Are you going to aggressive?
Which one are you talking about?
Birthright citizenship. Are you going to sign an executive order to ban?
We are looking at it very seriously, absolutely.
I mean, is yes or no? Or are you
And
going to go
I believe we have the absolute right, but determined by the Supreme Court of the United States.
Are you going to send 15,000 troops to the border?
So go ahead, what's your next question?
Also, on the Khashoggi matter, we've been more than a month since the death of Mr. Khashoggi,
Yeah.
the journalist.
Very sad thing, very terrible thing.
Is guilty of having him murdered, and if so,
I'll
what
have
kind
a
of
much
punishment will be
stronger
involved?
opinion on that subject over the next week, and I'm working very closely with Congress. We're working together, some very talented people, and we're working with Congress, we're working with Turkey, and we're working with Saudi Arabia, and I'm forming a very strong opinion. Go ahead, John. Go ahead, John.
Mr. President, just a quick follow-up. About Nancy Pelosi, you said that Nancy Pelosi, she loves our country. Do you regret some of the things you said?
I believe that with their current policy, they're using a wrecking ball on our country. I believe that 100%. This would be a wrecking ball. But I think there's a compromise somewhere, and it would be really good for our country. Okay, how about one more?
Do you
Go
regret
ahead.
the ad? Do you regret the ad that you did that was branded as a racist ad, and even Fox
No, I
News
don't.
wouldn't air it,
No.
NBC wouldn't
Do
air it,
I
other
regret it?
networks? Yeah.
Surprised you'd ask me that question. I do not. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, sir. And I think we'd all love to have more of these if you're willing. In 2017, shortly after you took office, your Homeland Security Department shuttered a program to counter groups, domestic terrorist groups, and redirected that funding towards fighting Islamic terrorism. Do you believe that white supremacist terrorists, right-wing terrorists, these homegrown terrorists on that side of the spectrum are a problem, sir? And
Yeah,
what is
I
your
do.
administration
I
going
do
to do
believe
about
that's
it?
a problem. I believe all hate is a problem, but I do believe that is a problem.
What are you going
and
to
it's
do
a
about it,
problem
sir?
we want to solve.
How,
okay.
sir? What are you
go
going
ahead.
to do about it,
Go
sir?
ahead.
Sir, what are you going to do about it?
Go ahead.
You cut off the funding.
Mr. President, you've
No,
said...
we have given funding for that, a lot of funding, but I do believe it's a problem. And can I tell you what? It's a problem that I don't like even a little bit. Go ahead.
Many local districts across the country rejected your midterm message, particularly suburban women. How do you bridge that divide now? Also with the
I
influx
think
of
my
women
message
coming
was
into
very
Congress.
well received. I mean, just look at the results. Midterm elections are disasters for sitting presidents and administrations. This has been a very successful, and look, you can write it any way you want, and if you disagree with me, this has been an incredibly successful one. You look at the races. How about Ohio? I didn't even mention. I mentioned Florida. I mentioned Georgia. How about the governor of Ohio? A fantastic,
suburban women voters?
Excuse me. A fantastic man who was down in the polls and everything that was so great. And I went up there and I did a rally. And they have now a great governor. You're going to have a great governor in Ohio for hopefully a long period of time, but for 4 years. And Mike DeWine is a fantastic person. And I went up there for 2 reasons, because I felt that his opposition was not a good person, and we know a lot of Italy. So add that to Florida, and add that to Georgia, and add that to all of the other races that we won, outside even, which were the biggest of all. Because these were races that, and Mike Pence can tell you, and some of the folks over here can tell you, these were races that were going to be unopposed. We were not going to oppose certain of the people running, certain senators. They said they couldn't be beaten. They said Heidi could not be beaten. Please don't do it. They couldn't. This was a year out.
What about in the suburban
Excuse
districts?
me,
How do you get those back?
You're telling me about popularity. They said many of these people, when I said 9 out of 11, but I said, and so I think the level of popularity, the first question I was asked was about, well, what have you learned? What about your own popularity? I think that's what I learned. Well received by this great country, by the people of our great country. And I'm very proud of that, because I love the people of this country. These people, we are the greatest people. I love the people of our country.
What do you say to women,
and
Mr.
I'll tell you
President?
something. When you look at the races that we won in Florida, which we weren't expected to win, and Georgia, which we weren't expected to win, and Ohio, I've rebuilt, and I'm in the process of rebuilding our military, and the jobs are here, every one of them built here. We're going to have the strongest, very shortly, we're going to have the strongest military our country has ever had. I've done more for the done, certainly in many, many decades, with choice and with other things, as you know, with other things. But our vets are doing better than they've ever done. But if you look at choice alone, I mean, just take a look at what we've done with choice. But the people of our country are very happy with the job that I'm doing. And you know, one of the things, both at the border, they want it with our military, they want it with law enforcement, they want it with ICE. You know, we've taken out thousands of gang members, thousands out of our, it's hard to believe, thousands out of our country. Women of our country who are incredible people, they want security, they want safety, they want financial security also. We've done that. But they want physical security. And we've taken out thousands of people that shouldn't be in this country. But we have to get better.
How will you change that?
Hopefully the tone can get a lot better. And I really believe it begins with the media. We used to call it the press.
Does it begin with you, Mr. President?
I really believe it begins with the media. There's a very interesting story written in a very good paper recently that talked about the fact that it isn't good what the media is doing, and that I do have the right to fight back because I'm treated very unfairly. So I do fight back, and I'm fighting back not for me. I'm fighting back for the people of this country. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you.